And I think you all know that at any university we try to stimulate an environment where any individual faculty member and students can pursue their personal passions around whatever research topic gets them very excited. On the other hand, there's an increasing push toward working on large, complicated problems that require multidisciplinary solutions and an emphasis on the job creation and impact on the economy that our research work can provide. So those are some of the themes that I'll talk about in going through some of this material with you today. In terms of our technologies within GTRI, the white box on the far, on your right, shows some of the areas where we have core capabilities. There's a lot of work in electromagnetics, radar systems, radar signature analysis and manipulation is really a tremendously strong area for GTRI. In fact, some of the best radar engineers in the world are at GTRI. I can say that our professors have written the books on radar systems that are widely used across the defense complex. We have a lot of folks working on antennas and novel antennas designs, and in fact you see some of them here in the upper left. So this antenna is printed on paper. So it's an inkjet printing process to produce a very inexpensive but highly functional radar antenna. This antenna is a good bit more sophisticated and a good bit larger. The proportion is not quite shown. It's about the size of this tabletop, but underneath that surface is a dynamic set of actuators that lets that antenna reconfigure itself dynamically in real time so that the lobe, the primary lobe for power and information broadcast or receive is pointed at the satellite or the cell tower or the other antenna where it is transmitting to, and it maintains that lock on that tower by dynamically changing the antenna pattern in real time. The use for it then, of course, is to put this type of an antenna on a vehicle that is bouncing around, traveling over tough terrain, or to put it on a floating platform in the ocean where it's riding the waves. But if you're dealing with autonomous vehicles, you worry about size and you worry about power consumption. This antenna lets you minimize power consumption by letting you keep your beam focused on the transmit and receive station that you're interacting with. So this, we're very proud of this. It was identified as one of the top 10 technology breakthroughs by the intelligence community last year. So we also do other interesting work in thin films and materials, and of course you know an awful lot about that here at UD in the materials world. We had a brief discussion over lunch around quantum computing, and so we have a group on campus that not only within GTRI actually, that works on quantum computing, but also can prepare this planar ion trap for you. So if you're interested to move into the quantum computing area, we were asked by various federal agencies to develop a low-cost, high-reliability planar ion trap that we can prepare and deliver to other research groups for about $6,000. And more importantly, we can get it into your lab and up and running in a very stable fashion in about 3 months. So if you want to do quantum computing, if you want, and this is a group of individual atoms that are isolated on the surface, and I didn't bring the animation, but for quantum computing we can make these atoms move about that surface individually, move up, move down, move left, move right. And so their spatial location within the planar ion trap is one way to provide a on-off switch using atoms as part of the on-off switch. And then, of course, the other way to do quantum level computing is by individual excitation of the individual atoms that you've trapped, so that an excited state is on and the ground state is an off in your switching pattern. So a lot of exciting work, autonomous vehicles as well, and lots of good things happening. We're very excited about many of the programs. So moving on toward the ecosystem, this is the first snapshot of such an ecosystem that I'll provide, and then I'll talk a little bit more broadly. But if you, this slide is useful to think our way through what this ecosystem is trying to accomplish. Basic discovery on the far left, use-inspired basic research these areas would generally be the purview of our academic colleagues in the College of Engineering, the College of Computing, College of Science. And then when we get into the applied area and into technology maturation, we get into the interdisciplinary research institutes helping us to bridge that technology gap between basic and applied, with GTRI pushing the applied portion of it and pushing it out into commercial application and into the marketplace with the help of our Enterprise Innovation Institute. So this is a microcosm of the Innovation Institute in general. If you're a student of such things, there's several books that I can direct your attention to. One of them is around the triple helix. And this is talking about the interplay between universities, government, and academic industry and government sponsorship, and how the roles of each of these institutions changes in time and changes in light of the readiness level for deployment of these technologies. So this is an interesting thing to think about, but the argument being that if you look at where you're investing, which is down here in the trough, and then you drive it to the point where you're actually starting to realize a return on that investment, typically you would expect to see the academic community at the far left here driving the basic investment. And then at some point, some application comes to light and industry becomes more and more interested, and you would expect out at this far end, where there's actually products delivered and profits generated, you would expect to see more of the industry interaction. But that dynamic is not completely well defined, and I think most of our universities are working toward becoming more and more agile in being able to work with industry, and the government is encouraging us to work together to span this entire space, and and fundamentally is encouraging this triple type of partnership as we go forward. So if we look at the what is the imperative? What does the government think that we're trying to accomplish? And I should mention that I recently revalidated these points with the Associate Director of the White House Office of Science and Technology Policy, Pat Falcone, who was down to visit us at Georgia Tech just last week. But the U.S. is heavily involved in global innovation and economic leadership. We want to maintain our leadership in those areas, and the ability to do that is becoming more and more dependent upon design, make, learn cycles that are accelerating very, very quickly. So the time to drive an idea from basic discovery out into the market is becoming more and more competitive, and we have to maintain our edge and be very good at that as we deal with other groups in Asia, in China, and even in India and other parts of the world where they are investing heavily in new infrastructure and are competing with us more and more robustly. So we have to continue to work in those directions. So the key to a robust U.S. innovative capacity is the private-public partnership, close proximity and virtual interaction being highly important, end-to-end view of the entire ecosystem. How do we push it out with everybody understanding what our end objective ultimately is? And it requires a U.S. innovation policy focused not merely on the amount of R&D, but on the composition and efficiency of that R&D as government dollars and industry dollars, and as we know, academic dollars become more and more constrained. So these innovation ecosystems provide the structure where people can leverage against each other's resources and become the interaction point where ideas can be nucleated and developed and pushed into the marketplace. So another text that describes some of this is, perhaps you've seen it, is the book around Pasteur's quadrant. And if you read through this text, you know, it talks about that you have this quadrant of motivation, let's say. So at one level, it's curiosity. You know, why are you interested to expand your fundamental knowledge? Just a quest for fundamental understanding. And that aligns with consideration of use. Why am I doing these things? What can come of this? And with respect to that, you find people like Niels Bohr, who worked on the fundamental understanding of the atom, who was just downright curious for understanding the universe and the world and what is going on at the subatomic level. At the other end, you can think of Thomas Edison, who was fixated at one point on, I need a filament that will last and will work. And of course, you know, he experimented with endless numbers of filaments before he found one that he was pleased with and worked well. On the other hand, you have Louis Pasteur, who was working on some challenges around microbes and biochemistry, but really needed to drill into the basic fundamental understanding of what was happening in order to address the problems that ultimately led to pasteurization of milk. Now, if you're down in this lower left-hand quadrant, where you have no curiosity and you have no use in mind, I think there you're in the couch potato mode. And so I just filled in the blank. I think that's a Late Night with Conan type of space, but I noticed that in the textbook they left it blank, so I felt obligated to fill that one in. So that's my take on that portion of it. So in terms of job creation and economic activity, fundamentally the federally funded research programs are increasingly focused on this overall ecosystem. So we find federal discretionary funding under intense downward pressure. We find increased expectations on economic impact of research. We find the administration's desire to accelerate translation of discovery out into the marketplace for a variety of reasons to help reinvigorate the economy and to show return on investment for investments that have gone forward. And so it's becoming increasingly dependent and a requirement from the federal government that we collaborate with industry. And you see even NSF requiring matching fund contributions on many of the awards. Most recently, the new descriptions of the engineering research centers require that you have partners involved with those who will provide matching funding. But just to touch on some of those examples, if you back up just to the beginning of this last administration, when Steve Chu came in as the Secretary of Energy, what you find is a variety of innovation hubs around energy that were supported by the Department of Energy. And one of them, for example, is around energy efficient buildings. And I'm somewhat proud to say that my former friends, and it's part of the ecosystem that I helped build back at Penn State, was the group that won the Energy Efficient Buildings Hub. But they have dozens of industry partners, including United Technologies and trade unions that really support, bring together a very dynamic and diverse group of contributions to this energy efficient hub. At the other end of the spectrum, much more basic science, is the artificial photosynthesis group that's led by Nate Lewis and his colleagues out at UC Berkeley. And that team is very diverse as well, with a variety of national laboratories, a variety of California industries working together. Interestingly, both of these hubs, and I'll elaborate on this in a minute, they all have a regional focus associated with them too. The consortium on light water reactors is led out of Oak Ridge National Laboratories, and Georgia Tech is a core partner with Oak Ridge. But that consortium is again one of these large hubs that has received of water $25 million per year each to work across this broad constituency. And the Center for Energy Storage Research is led by Argonne Laboratories, and the critical materials infrastructure is led by a group out of Ames Laboratory at Iowa State University. Now, just as an example, we can look at the structure of the research group at Ames Laboratory, and you can see their mission statement here. But it's interesting to think about this ecosystem just by taking this as one of the many examples that we can think about. So first item to look at is the depth and breadth of the partnerships that has come together. A university-led group. Ames Laboratory is basically, their materials-focused version of UDRI or GTRI. And they are partnering with Idaho National Labs and Lawrence Livermore Labs and Oak Ridge Labs, and then a variety of other university partners, and then a variety of pretty heavy-hitting corporate sponsors, GE and others. But then if you look at their mission, at how they have organized themselves, you see this large award with diversifying the supply chain. And this is the hub, by the way, on critical materials. So it's looking to replace or find an alternative source for the rare earth elements that are used in so many motors and in so many microelectronics components. Right now, we import all of those trace metals from China, and that's a concern for an economic competitive point of view, and also a concern for our national security in many ways. So their objective is to solve that problem by looking at diversifying the supply chain, and notice they have national laboratory leaders from Oak Ridge and from Idaho National Laboratory leading that part. Develop substitute materials, so looking at basic research to have new materials that could replace those in magnets and lighting and other areas. Again, these areas led by folks from the national labs. Improving reuse and recycle, and again, a diverse team of people working on that, and cross-cutting research to come up with innovative ways to solve these problems. So this is the type of team that seems to be more and more prevalent, and I have to say that in my past few jobs at universities, at Georgia Tech, at Ohio State, and even before that at Penn State, when we were successful in growing the overall research enterprise, as I said at the beginning, we worked very, very hard to make sure that any individual faculty member who wanted to pursue a particular area of research had the opportunity and the support behind them to be able to do so. But if you looked at the growth in those research engines, they were coming from large awards of this type that had enormously complicated teams and very broad missions that were carrying forward. So this is not the normal mentality of individual researchers on campus. And so it is a bit of a cultural change for how can we support such things at universities. So this innovation hub model has been adopted by other federal agencies. The Department of Energy, and I should say influenced somewhat by a Brookings study that I and Jim Duderstadt and others contributed. We were pleased that they adopted some of the mechanisms and methodology that we had proposed. And other agencies are adopting this methodology and applying it to, as I said, NSF ERCs, and most notably to the National Network for Manufacturing Institutes. So the objective in these ecosystems and in these hubs is to serve as a world leader, bring together large and small companies, academia, federal agencies, bridge the gap between basic and applied, and push it out into the marketplace, and create unparalleled environments to educate and train the workforce of the future. That mission is never lost in any of these systems. But it explicitly requires industry co-funding. So the philosophy behind the Department of Energy's approach is that they wanted to encourage industry in the U.S. to do the things that they thought, the industry thought, was the right thing to do and the right investments to make. But they wanted to help them accelerate that process and help industry drive that forward more successfully and in a more timely fashion by providing opportunity to leverage against federal dollars of various types. So that's what I think we are confronted with, and we're seeing more and more of that type of opportunity coming forward. So one of the areas that's pretty close to home was the first award under the Manufacturing Initiative, and that one was in fact bid and competed out of Wright Pat here, so I'm sure you're very familiar with it. But this was the National Additive Manufacturing Innovation Institute. And this one was one of the most complicated requests for proposals I had ever seen, because it was in fact multi-agency. It was reviewed, different portions of it were reviewed by Defense, by Energy, by the National Science Foundation, by NASA, and by Commerce. I mean, it made your head spin trying to figure out how to submit and be compliant with the application requirements. And then superimposed on top of that, you had to be doing something very, very innovative and convincing the various sponsors that your work would have impact. And so I should tell you that we at Georgia Tech worked on this proposal submission. We had 72 partners. We had national labs, industries, other universities. We had over $75 million in matching dollars and in-kind contributions on the table, and we had a very good plan. We didn't win. It went to your region, and it was actually centered in Youngstown, was the lead on the award. And the award has 76 members, four prime contractors, 33 universities, 4 equipment suppliers, $40 million of cost share included in it. But you can see, from the diagram that it really started as a regional economic hub, and then over time it has been adding members, in part at the request of its sponsoring agencies, but reaching out and adding different members that provide unique contributions from other portions of the state, but with this high concentration of regional economic impact. Now, some of my colleagues like to point out that this award that just happened to go to a swing state called Ohio right before the election, they thought that might be suspicious, but we all know that the selection process is pristine and that but in any case, the award came out, and this group is doing great things. What happens next, though, is that there's another round of these competitions for the National Network for Manufacturing Institutes. And the next 3 are going to be around lightweight and modern metals manufacturing. And we have, actually, this process is in place. And so pre-proposals have already been submitted. In fact, somewhere up here, it should mention that here at the bottom, all 3 of these new awards are stated to be defined by the end of this calendar year. So cross your fingers, we will see but the lightweight and modern metals manufacturing competition is being led out of the Office of Naval Research. The digital manufacturing and design innovation is being led out of Redstone Arsenal in Huntsville, Alabama. And the next generation of power electronics is being led by the Department of Energy's Office of Energy Efficiency and Renewable Energy. So again, the similar model, but all of these have come out as a package, but from 3 different agencies and with a lot of different requirements. But they have a lot of fundamentals that are underlying behind each of the submissions. One of them is around taking things from technology readiness level 4 up through a more market-ready portion of technology level 7. So various teams have submitted in this capacity already. And I have a little bit more information on a couple of them, but I think in the interest of time, I'll just skip over these couple and go right to a summary, and maybe we will have a little bit of time for a few questions or a little discussion period. But in summary, the point is, I think you can see that the government is expecting different from us. And we have to figure out how to work with these industry sponsors in a complex space, leveraging off of what they in industry think they are already planning to do. And so our objective, as you see here, is to provide these opportunities for use-inspired basic research funded by government and industry. Essential that you capture the expanding spectrum of government, public, private partnerships to accelerate those things, enable development of sustained industry-funded research, a regional focus. Most of those 3 awards have embedded in them a discussion that they are looking for a regional center that will have impact on the region's jobs and on the region's economic vitality. And oh, guess what? That makes our colleagues in the state government very excited and allows us the opportunity to request some sponsorship from our state partners as well. Inherent in all of these centers is a requirement that over time, and over a time period measured in 3 years, 5 years at most, these centers are expected to become self-sustaining. So they want to invest, the federal government and the industry partners want to invest in these cooperations that will perpetuate after the life of the initial grant is in place. So what we're talking about in some sense is $70 million seed grant proposals, right? We just have to get things started and see how they'll go. So that's, I just wanted to share with you that type of a snapshot of, what we think is going on. Responding to all of this requires us to behave in different ways than some of us are used to. And it certainly requires that we have strong partnerships with our industry colleagues, because there's no hope that a not-for-profit or a university can keep up with these matching requirements. And that is not the expectation of the federal government that we do so. Their expectation is that we find an industry partner who is already inclined to move in that direction and invest significantly in that direction, and then leverage the federal dollars. We do have the opportunity, and those who have won such awards in recent history have in fact had significant contributions coming from their states to help move this along.